What's up, everybody, and welcome to Growing Up Gaming, your weekly podcast where we meet a new person of the internet to discuss their childhood with gaming and how it inspired their lives today. My name is Mitch Power. Again, thank you guys so much for returning each and every week to the show. Hopefully you've hit that subscribe button on iTunes or Google Play or one of the other many services out there where you get your stuff. If you guys do, I greatly appreciate it. This week on the show, we have our guest. His name is Ben Harris. I met this man on the Comedy Button Facebook group, so he joins us to tell us his stories. Also a very funny particular one about a particular video game that ended up missing and where he ended up finding it. This is exactly why I do this show, because I enjoy hearing these stories. If any of you guys want to be on the show, go ahead and send me a tweet at MitchPower1116 or at the podcast Twitter page, which is at GUG Podcast on Twitter. Also, fair warning, for whatever reason, the computer decided to record the Skype audio instead of my audio, so audio might be a bit off and there might be some hiccups here and there. I apologize if you guys have any spikes in the audio. I try to do as best I can. But without further ado, let's get things started with Ben Harris. What got you started in gaming?
Okay. I must have been around about 4 or 5. My dad came home from work with this really strange device. And it was, really old school. It was called like a grandstand, which you will have never heard of, I imagine. And it was this big grey box, and it was really clunky, like huge buttons, basically transistor buttons. And you got 2 little control panels that came out with dials, like you got in Pong.
Right.
So those circular dials that would basically move a really basic block on the TV. So you had like a really basic version of Breakout and things like that. And it actually had a laser gun as well, so you had an even more basic version of Duck Hunt. That's kind of what got me started into game. That's my first experience.
When was that? What year was that? Was that way before Nintendo, or when was that?
Okay, so I'm going to sound very old now. That must have been 1984.
That's fine.
Yeah, so it wasn't before Nintendo, but it was pretty near when they first started sort of the Nintendo Entertainment System. Actually.
Right. So it was around that time, because Nintendo. Didn't Nintendo come out in 85? I know. Yeah, somewhere around that time.
It was definitely around that time, but we're in the UK, so we didn't really have a load of Nintendo stuff anyway at that point.
That's correct, because that's very important to remember that over in the States it was Nintendo and all this stuff, and then that's one of the biggest reasons why I wanted to do the show, is because so many people have completely different things of how they started gaming, and especially you, where you may not have had access to some of the things that we did in the States right away, but also you had access to stuff that I have no idea about, just like what you just said now. So that's awesome.
Yeah. Now, I can tell you about some very odd stuff. So I'll go through the timeline, really. We had the grandstand at the beginning, and at the beginning of the 80s, it was when, home computing was just starting out.
When computers were thousands and thousands and thousands of, just so expensive.
It was insane. We had something called the Acorn Electron, which was, it must have been around, I don't know, $1.5K, something like that.
Of course.
Had that, and that was a very basic, tape deck on the side. You stick the tape in and it sounds like a modem from the early 90s, that screeching, bipping fax machine type sound.
Oh, yeah, I think everybody remembers that very fondly.
Yeah, definitely. But it was quite cool. You got loads of games you will have never heard of, like Ghouls, and there's loads of different ones, but they're quite good, but it had an educational bent to it. So most of the games, or at least the games that my parents got me, were, all to do with mathematics and additional. So it wasn't it wasn't the the most fun system to be playing on, to be honest.
For some reason, that's the only thing I remember when it comes to computer games for the longest time. Was like, obviously there were games on computer that weren't educational, but for whatever reason, I only remember the educational stuff, like the Mavis Beacon and the Math Blaster and like all of that type of stuff. For whatever reason, I don't equivalent PC with game besides Doom, because like I think everybody and their mother had Doom, like obviously like that was later in the 90s, but like I just remember, just for whatever reason, the only games I remember that weren't like educational was like Doom, Solitaire, Minesweeper, thanks to Microsoft for Solitaire and Minesweeper with everything. But like other than that, everything else was like educational. Maybe I was just in the lame section of the PC gaming realm, I don't know, but that's the only thing I remember from that time.
Well, I mean, we had so the computer, the real computer I got. So the first one was after the Acorn, which was kind of like the first PC you will have ever encounter, which was the equivalent of a 186. So it was really, really old, 512K, which was incredibly powerful at the time. But we had, I remember text adventures were very big at that. And they were really, quite good, to be honest. You had things like Zork, Hobbit, and the very, very early kind of point and click adventures. So they were quite cool. But you still had all your educational stuff. But again, that's my parents' kind of just huge expenditure by giving me these wonderful, enlightening and educational games.
Yeah, I feel like in a way I missed. Like I said, I really didn't play computer stuff, but also too, like at the time, computers were so expensive, and of course, I didn't grow up with a ton of money or whatever, so it was definitely hard. Like I didn't have that kind of like experience when it came to like computer gaming, but like I also too, I feel like I missed a good amount of like all the LucasArts point and click adventure games, like all those types of games I feel like I missed out on, which obviously they're doing decent jobs of going and like re-releasing on PS4 and remastering, Day of the Tentacle and like all those types of games. But yeah, there was like a huge chunk of stuff that I completely never even came across.
Oh man, I love those games. They were fantastic. So I think one of the first LucasArts ones was called Lume. And you basically went around as this hooded figure and created weird magical spells by weaving different kind of piano notes. So it was a really weird, obscure kind of premise. But it was amazing. The graphics were fantastic and the story was pretty good. So yeah, I got hooked on all of those. Monkey Island, of course, 1 and 2. And then much later on, you got Full Throttle, which was, of course, rebooted not long ago. So, yeah, I mean, that was basically what I was playing at that point, because we didn't really have access to any consoles, really. I mean, they were around. You had, a bit later, the Master System, Sega Master System, and the Mega Drive, which or the Genesis.
Right. Yeah, because that's how I know it as the Genesis. And that's why, like, the same guest from Europe when he said Mega Drive, and again, it said, I hear Mega Drive now and I know, but like if you would have told me, like when I was around that time, if you would have said Mega Drive to me, I'm like, what in the world is a Mega Drive?
Yeah, I mean, I would love to be like in that boardroom when that decision was made. It's like, okay, the Americans understand Genesis, but Europeans, no, we'll have to come up with a new name.
Yeah, that's always, I wonder what that was about, you know what I mean? Like, why change it? Same thing with Famicom and, Nintendo Entertainment System. I remember reading somewhere, I think it is that, like, the Nintendo Entertainment System, because they didn't want to call it a computer or, like, a video game machine. They wanted to, like, make sure it was about entertainment. So, like, Rob, for example, like that robot or whatever, came packaged with NES, so that way they can consider it a toy instead of a video game system, because everybody had such a sour taste in their mouth from Atari crashing and like all of that. So like Nintendo packaged Rob with an NES so that way they can consider it a toy, quote unquote, instead of like a video game machine. So, and thankfully it caught on and everything, but still the name change is just odd too. Like Famicom stands for Family Computer. Like, why couldn't that have caught on in America?
I don't know. They must have done focus groups or something odd. Got some morons in a room and said, "Look, do you understand this?"
Yeah, do you know what a family computer means? And they're like, "Nope, not a clue." And they're just like, "Ah, shit, now we gotta come up with a new name."
Yeah, it's very odd. Anyway, I went from PC. So I suppose my first console was. I'm trying desperately not to say SNES because people hate when people say SNES, but the Super Nintendo.
So was that before the Sega Mega Drive, or you actually had the Mega Drive first?
I didn't actually have the Mega Drive. I wasn't a Sega kid, so I knew that like my friends had Mega Drives or Master Systems before.
Right.
But I wanted Mario Kart basically, so I went and got the Super Nintendo. And I'm very glad that I did because there were some amazing games on that.
Well, I mean, I was the exact opposite. Like, I was a Sega kid, and I had the random person that had the Super Nintendo in the neighborhood, so I at least got a chance to play. But I missed all the Super Nintendo stuff. So, and yeah, like whatever. I everywhere I knew it was Super Nintendo. Some people call it SNES. Some people call it SNES. Whatever. Hey, deal with it. Hey, if you don't like it. You know it. When you hear the word that you don't like, you know what it means, so just think that. Everybody stop complaining about how you name stuff.
I know, it was ridiculous. Was it last year when there was a whole debate on the internet about SNES and Super Nintendo?
There's always a debate. There's a debate about all video game stuff. I'm sure people still talk about what's better, Super Nintendo or Genesis. And, like, the thing that sucks is, like, there were good Genesis games and there was good Sega games in general, but then, like, it's really hard when you look back to like debate that and say no, Super Nintendo wasn't as good of a lineup. Like, I don't think you looking back, nobody can say that. Like, you know what I mean? That's there. Obviously there's a reason why the SNES Classic was a much bigger deal. You had Super Nintendo and everything. Did you ever have any brothers or sisters or anybody that would play with you, or were your parents ever involved with playing games with you as well?
No, my parents were. As most parents in those days didn't have a freaking clue. And I didn't have any brothers or sisters, but I had some very close friends. So we were all into it, through that. I've got a quite funny stroke weird story around Mario Kart, actually. So Mario Kart was the game we all played because, it was multiplayer and everyone could get involved. So we're pretty much obsessed by Mario Kart for a good, 3-4 months. And I remember once my best friend and his younger brother came round, and then they left. And then miraculously, my Mario Kart cartridge had disappeared.
Oh, shit.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm like, okay, what the fuck's going on here? Where's it gone? So, of course, I knew it was in the console. I wasn't going to take it out. So I'm like, okay, someone's obviously taken it. I knew it wasn't my best friend because he could play it, around mine at any time. So through a process of elimination, I kind of worked out it was his younger brother, who was a little bit of a hellion, but he was all right. He was a good kid, but, a typical kind of naughty little brother kind of character. So I rang James, my friend, and said, is your brother taking Mario Kart? And he went, no, I don't think so. So anyway, continued searching for it, and the only person who could have taken it was his little brother. So I decided when he came back from school to ring his little brother and ask him outright, and he was like, no, I've not got it. Anyway, long story short, we then thought, okay, well, we'll go and search my friend's house to see if, he's hidden it or anything. It took us 2 months, and we found it. And we found it sewn into his teddy bear. So he'd opened his teddy bear, put the cartridge in, and sewed the teddy bear back up again.
Jesus! Like, what was the point of that?
Well, because they had a SNES as well. So what he would do was unpick the sewing, take it out, and play it when nobody else was in the house. and then take it back out, put it back in the teddy bear, and sew it back up again.
That is fucking crazy. Like the amount of work you have to go through each time you really. I mean, I get it. Mario Kart's fun, but dude, you went through opening a teddy bear, and of course, the crazy thing is, I'm sure he got super good at sewing it back up and shit, because I'm sure he had to do it a lot of times. But yeah, dude, that's crazy. Like.
Yeah.
Whoa! I had games stolen by friends. Like, it was here's the shitty part. It's like, not games stolen by friends, but it was like, hey, let me borrow that game. Okay, cool. And then dude just moves out of nowhere. I'm like, oh, well, guess I'm never seeing that again.
Oh man, I tell you what, the amount of games I lent out and then just forgot about because I'd moved on to something else, and then like 2 months down the line, I'd be like, oh shit, where did I put that game? But, I think when I was growing up, I was too shy, really, to ask for them. It was a bit ridiculous, really. But, fun and games, so finally got it back.
How did you find out?
Well, my best friend, James, who was his older brother, we just searched the house. We just searched the whole house for like months. Picking stuff up, shaking it, looking behind drawers. And then just picked up this teddy bear and just saw that there was some weird kind of sewing on the back. And there it was.
That's hilarious.
Yeah, hilarious. So he was like an evil genius. He's a very respectable man now, with a very good job. But it was very.
I bet he doesn't want that to be known, but it's okay. We whatever. No, it's fine. You do dumb things when you're a kid. I thought it would have been funnier if like you looked at the teddy bear and it had so much stuffing in it that there was just a clear outline of an SNES cartridge. Like, that doesn't look right. What's that doing there? But yeah, I mean, like, again, who would think to look inside of a teddy bear? Like, who just thought, like, yeah, of course I want to do that.
I know, it still amazes me to this day, but gives you a funny anecdote, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. That's one of those things. Like, I just remember, I remember letting one of my friends borrow a game, and then he's like, "Cool, this is a good game," and then like literally all of a sudden he just wasn't at school one day, and I'm like, "Where'd this kid? What happened? Oh, he moved." I'm like, well, that little asshole has my Wild 9 game for PlayStation. Thanks a lot, kid. I guess I'm never seeing that shit again. But yeah, I mean, that happened, I want to say twice. And I was pissed each time. I was like, God damn it. Same thing happened with like, one time was that a guy moved. The other one was I let a friend borrow a game. And then apparently he felt he could let somebody else borrow it. And I'm like, oh, because I didn't know you could just loan shit out that you lent out, but okay. And that was Resident Evil 4 PlayStation. And I was just like, all right, I'm done doing this shit. And I don't think I remember lending anybody games. If I wanted to play games over at their house, I just brought it with me to their house. I'm like, nah, I'm coming with this shit and I'm taking it home. Like, I'm not leaving this here anymore.
Yeah, that's the best policy. That happened to me as well several times. I remember having a discussion saying, oh, can I have my... I think it was some weird PC game called Altered Destiny. And I said, can I have it back? And he said, oh, I can, but I have to get it back off Robert. I'm like, who?
Who the hell's Robert?
Who the hell is Robert? Oh, yeah, I lent it to him. I'm like, okay, that's not all right, is it, really?
Yeah, no, not really. It's not your shit to let other people borrow it.
And the way he was saying it is if it's be really put him out to ask for the game back. I'm like, fuck's sake.
Maybe he was one of those shy kids that was nervous to ask for games back as well, but too bad it wasn't his fucking game to lend out in the beginning, right?
Well, exactly.
Man up and go get my shit back.
That's it.
So, man, that's a really good story. I mean, again, not everybody can say they had to find their Mario Kart inside of a teddy bear.
No, exactly.
That's definitely something different. So then, obviously, you had SNES. Did you kind of, from that point on, did you ever go back to playing PC games and stuff, or were you kind of like in that realm, like console realm, going forward?
I was doing both, really. So a bit later on, I started to build my own PCs. So I'd gone to university, and spent ridiculous amounts of money on components and stuff, which I probably should have spent it on food. But so this was right at the beginning where you just started to get graphic accelerators, so 3DFX cards.
Right.
And you could just about, source the equipment to make your own gaming PC. So I did that, but I also had a console alongside it, pretty much all the way, because there was just, even though you had a gaming PC, you still didn't have a load of games, and most of them were, Doom or Doom clones at that point in time. So you didn't have like a big variety of things. You still had you basically had your tacticals, your RTSs, and your very early FPSs. But all the other games, didn't really exist, or good ones didn't exist on the PC so much. So I had, consoles alongside it. I even had an Atari Lynx, believe it or not.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah, that was a mistake.
I think Atari would say the same thing, too.
Oh, man. The most annoying thing is, it's a piece of hardware. It was really good. It's a bit like, the Vita. Really good piece of hardware, but the Lynx had bugger all good games on it at all. I think it had about, 2 passable games.
Yeah, that's always unfortunate, because, there's hardware out there that works well, and then nobody wants to make any software for it for whatever the reason ends up being, and that should I think it happens, obviously, more with handhelds, because, home consoles aren't as big of a deal when it comes to that, except for, I would say, maybe, Nintendo later on down the road, just because power-wise they weren't keeping up, but, handhelds are where it really gets screwed, because it's unless somebody wants to make software for that thing, nobody gives a shit. Nobody will care.
Yeah, and the problem is I'm an early adopter for most things, so that can really screw you if so you're paying a premium, and then you're pretty much at the mercy of what games are going to be made.
Yeah, you're just hoping people give a shit about it.
That's it, and they didn't with the Atari Lynx, unfortunately.
And, so again, I'm sure Atari would rather have a DeLorean and hop back in the time machine and go, man, can we just not do that shit?
Oh, man. Yeah, it's a shame they really were nosediving at that point. So you had the... They did the Jaguar as well, didn't they?
Yeah, they did.
Yeah. Again, the machine was... I didn't have that one, but the machine was reasonably good, the hardware. It was pretty good.
Yeah, again, I don't know what it was. Again, when I hear Atari Jaguar, I hear... The only game I remember anybody giving a shit about was Alien vs. Predator, which I know there was an Alien vs. Predator game on there, and that's literally it. If you asked me to name any other Jaguar game, I couldn't tell you. I don't know what the price was, and that's always another factor, too, is, price, if people give a shit about a console or not, because, you can have an amazing piece of hardware, but if you don't price it right to where mass market can afford it or feel it's worth that price, then that's going to fuck you over too. Even Sony and Microsoft have ran across that issue too. So that's not just the small guys. You have to, it's that right balance, right? It's good, but not too expensive, but not too hard to develop for. It's that fine line you have to walk and everything. And so far every company has had that fuck up, but then that really good high point too. So
yeah, and I think the Atari Jaguar, from memory, was bloody expensive.
I think it
was in the UK anyway. It was well outside of something I could get. But yeah, so I think after the SNES it was Super Nintendo. It was,
you're fine, dude.
I know. What did I get after that? I think must have been the N64. Around there. It's the one afterwards. Did the N64 come around about the same time as the PS1?
Yeah, it was that life cycle was Saturn, PlayStation 1, and 64.
That's right, yeah. So I had an N64 and played that to death with Zelda, of course, and Super Mario. But they were basically pretty much the only 2 games that I played on it. But it was still a damn good machine. Weird ass controller.
Yeah, that was definitely a controller that when you first looked at it, you're like, the way you think you should hold it is wrong. Like, you just, like, because you're trying to be like, I should have a third hand for some reason. Like, I should have a third hand to hold the controller in a way. But I mean, and also too, it was odd how some games use the analog stick more and some games didn't. Like, it was just kind of strange how they incorporated that. But, you know, that's the only thing I will give Nintendo credit for is, like, they have some weird ass controllers, but also how, at least the first party Nintendo shit, uses it in a way where it works. You know what I mean? Like, they just incorporate how the controller's made to make the games work right and just play well. But when you get to, like, third party shit, it just gets a little wonky, and depending on how they want to use it. But yeah, N64 controller was a little strange.
But I mean, that was near the advent of analog controllers anyway, so most developers didn't even really know how to produce games with the analog stick. So yeah, I can kind of understand it. But really, I invested most of my money in the PlayStation when that came along. I just had so much stuff for that machine. Yeah. I even had. Do you remember the Namco G-Cons? Did you ever have any?
I do not know. What was that?
They were the light guns that came with...
like Time Crisis and stuff?
Right, that's it, yeah.
Yes, I do remember those.
So Time Crisis and Point Blank. I mean, not necessarily Time Crisis, but Point Blank, that was an amazing game. That was so much fun because you could link two of these G-Cons together and just, you know, have a ball with whoever's around at that time. That was a really good game.
Like, those games were so fun because, I mean, of course, every time you go to an arcade, you want to play those types of gun games and stuff. And now it sucks because they just straight aren't around anymore. Like, they don't exist. And I mean, I know the LCD TVs kind of screwed things up because, you know, you can't use those guns on LCD TVs or whatever. But, like, you know, now I think they're trying to come back with some of those gun games, like, but they're AR games now, so you have to, like, put your phone on top of, like, a fake Nerf gun and, like, do that, which is strange. But yeah, those types of games now, it sucks because those types of games are just, people will only think, oh, those are in arcades, because you can't even play them on modern televisions anymore.
I didn't realise that. Is that because of the feedback from the CRT or something?
Yeah, it was the CRT. Like, the way that the CRT worked with it, I don't know how. But again, that's one of those, like, I'm sure I could watch a YouTube video and find out how those types of things worked. But yeah, like, it was when the LEDs and the LCD TVs and all those things came out. It's just, you can't point something at an LCD. So it's the way the tube worked when you pulled the trigger. It was just, yeah, you can't do those games anymore on TVs. So, like, that's why some of the gamers that are out there who, you know, are avid collectors and stuff, they still have a tube TV, like, specifically for certain games, just the way they look on the tube TV, but also games like that where they don't have an option of working without a tube TV. My friend Brandon, he was looking for one particular Sony TV, apparently. He's like, this is, like, top of the line, like, the best tube TV they made before they got rid of tube TVs. So that's, like, you know, that's a thing. Like, people out there are like, no, I want this model tube TV with this, you know, make and model because this was the best for game. I'm like, yeah, I'm Jesus. Cool. I'm cool with my 4K gaming TV, and I'll just stick to new shit, so I'm good.
I suppose the only kind of new equivalent is, you know, the VR shooter peripheral with Farpoint. That's the only thing I can do.
That makes sense as well, because that's kind of what's taken over. Because, like I said, those types of light gun games, just in the traditional sense of, like, Time Crisis, just that they just don't exist anymore. And the only other thing that bummed me out, too, is, like, in the arcade, you had that experience with those light gun games that it had, like, when you shot, it did the bolt action on the, you know, boom, 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 like, on the gun. And, of course, at home, it didn't. So it's like, oh, man. But, again, you went to the arcade and paid a lot more money to beat Time Crisis there rather than just buying it on PlayStation and bringing it home.
And it was a solid peripheral. I mean, that thing got chucked around, it got beer spilt on it, bag burns in it. It was, you know, it was a tough piece of equipment. I've still got them upstairs somewhere.
That's awesome.
But, yeah, they are pretty good. So yeah, just went PlayStation crazy, you know. all the normal Final Fantasies, and God, I spent so much on that.
I think that's the one system where I really broadened my horizons, because like for a while there I was playing games, but I was mostly playing what was like super popular at the time, you know, like I wasn't really one of those, like I don't have that deep backlog of shit that like I can pull from, right? Like if you ask me what I played on Genesis, NBA Jam, Mortal Kombat, what else, like Sonic, you know what I mean? Like I played the stuff that was so popular at the time, so I don't have those, you know. Some people will say like, oh, I played this game, and I'm like, I've never even fucking heard of that game. It sucks because I wasn't one of those kids that was like as into gaming. I was just like, oh, everybody likes NBA Jam, I'm gonna buy that. Oh, everybody likes, you know, Mortal Kombat, I'll get that. And that's kind of how I played for a while, until PlayStation, until I started seeing games that were just like weird ass games, and I was just like, dude, what is this about? And I started playing a bigger variety of games. Like I wasn't really into RPGs until I played Final Fantasy VII and Pokemon, and that's when I was like, oh shit, RPGs are really fun. Yeah. So that's like a good, and same thing with Metal Gear. I never played a stealth game, you know what I mean? I never played like that type of game, especially the game, that type of story. So I was just like, dude, this game is amazing. And that was around the time when I started actually playing different shit, not just what's popular.
Yeah, I mean, the library on the PlayStation was massive.
Huge.
And you really got a load of stuff coming through from all over the place. Lots of Japanese stuff come. So I was an RPG guy, and I played so many odd, bizarre, weird titles. Like, I'm trying to think of some now, like Dark Hearts Revenant and things like that, which now, if I had it, it's actually worth money because it was, you know, quite obscure. But yeah, I mean, I was an RPG guy all the way through. So from the PC, I used to play the very old gold box Dungeons and Dragons games, which were absolutely fantastic, but nobody's ever heard of them, or not many people.
Right. Yeah, I the whole Dungeons and Dragons anything, I just didn't get it. I was like wet over my head completely. I just never even paid attention to any of them. Not saying they weren't interesting. I just was like, again, too busy playing shit everybody else was playing.
But to be honest, the only reason why I understood them is because I used to, you know, I was pure geek. I used to play, you know, proper Dungeons and Dragons. So I knew all the lingo, I knew all the stats and everything. But if you didn't have that knowledge, it was pretty much impossible for you to understand the games. Because, you know, it's not like they came with a tutorial or anything. You had a kind of instruction manual that was pathetic. So if you didn't know the stuff, it was just impossible to understand them.
Right.
But, yeah, so loads of stuff on the PlayStation. And then it would have, of course, went on to PlayStation 2, which was another phenomenal machine. Yeah, I remember, I think the first game I got with it was SSX Tricky.
Dude, yes, that game was really fun too. Like that, I remember playing Cool Borders on PlayStation. Like that was the one that was made by like 989, which was a Sony-owned studio and everything. But like, I remember playing Cool Borders a lot. And then there was like 1080 Avalanche or 1080 for N64, which I never got a chance to play. But Tricky, yeah, I remember working at when I worked at the video game store, like that game being just so popular. Like if there was ever one that got traded in, it sold so fast. like it was like, oh, used copy of that, sold. It was just like a staple that everybody had to have.
Yeah, I mean, it had character, it had, you know, decent soundtrack, but it just played amazingly well. And again, another good local multiplayer game as well. It was, yeah, that was a hell of a game. That really good.
Yeah, and that was the other thing, too, is, like, the local multiplayer stuff. Like, I think when N64 hit, when it had all the control ports, like, that's when local multiplayer really blew up and everything. And then, obviously, it went into that next generation. But, yeah, I remember, obviously, now it's harder and harder to find local co-op stuff or just couch co-op shit. Like, my wife has been wanting to play games lately, so I've try to find games that we can play together, but it's getting harder and harder and harder to find games that you could actually play on the same system together without being competitive, because she doesn't want to play games against me because I'll end up whooping her ass and she'll just get really mad at me. So I'm just like, yeah, we're not doing that. We're going to start playing games that we can play together and do something. We if you ever want a good couch co-op game, Overcooked. Fucking amazing.
Yeah, I was just about to say that. Fucking
incredible. It will bring you together, but also lead you down a road where you may not talk for the rest of the night. Like, yeah, when you're screaming at the top of your lungs, get me the fucking potatoes, like, it's not a joke. It is. My friend Brandon saw it. He's like, hey, how's that? I'm like, it's amazing. And then I asked him how he was, how, you know, him and his wife were playing. I'm like, how'd it go? He goes, oh, we had to stop playing. We got way too heated. I'm like, oh, okay. Well, don't get too mad. But yeah, that's it's harder to find those types of games now, which kind of sucks.
It really is, because I try and get my wife into games, and it just doesn't click with her. I tell you what, we did play, which she really got into. We played, Until Dawn.
Mm-hmm.
So we played kind of a chapter each, if you like.
Right.
And then we kind of debate on the choices, and she really got into that. So if anybody asks me of any game that they can get their partner into, I always recommend Until Dawn, because it's a really good game as well. Have you played it?
I personally haven't. I know that's been like a big thing, like especially if women, like, or I shouldn't say women, just like spouses not being into games as much. Like a lot of those adventure games, like basically all the Telltale games, like making the choices and doing those types of things. Like I know that there's couples, like spouses, who just like to watch, and they'll just watch and then they'll be like, oh no, you should do that choice or do that choice. And that's also something too, because I have those types of games too that I just haven't even thought of playing with her, because she actually, at least I'm happy that my wife enjoys playing games. Her favorite game's Diablo, but I can only play Diablo so many times before I'm like, we have to find something else to play. Like, this is a great game, but we got to find some other shit. And thankfully, I told her, I'm like, Overcooked's awesome. I heard it's good. And she's like, I don't know. And then we wouldn't stop playing it until we got 3 stars on every one of the levels.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, I mean, I've played all of Diablos, but the people who keep on playing over and over, just getting the loot, I don't get that.
You get to a certain point where you're like, I got cool shit, I don't need to keep playing. Like, I got cool enough shit where I could stop. So the only thing that's been beneficial is like the different characters. Like, we went through together as barbarians at the same time, which was kind of stupid, because I was like, shit, we could have played different characters just to see how the different characters play. And then we played it again as each of us playing as a different character. But that's the type of game that she could play over and over, just because she enjoys not just the looting, but just like the challenge of it at times, and like just, basically just hacking and slashing the shit out of things. She enjoys it. But yeah, again, I get to a point where I'm like, this is fun, but like, we gotta play some other shit. Like, we can't just keep playing Diablo's story over and over and over again. Like, I get it, but that's why I brought her other games. We actually played, she was hesitant on the Lego games. I get it, the Lego games are kiddish, but they're fun as shit. Like, they really are. And they're kind of basic, but they're still really fun to play. And she was kind of against it at first, and then there was a Pirates of the Caribbean one, which she loves those movies because she loves Johnny Depp. And I was like, hey, Lego Pirates, you could play this one. And she's like, all right, let's try that. And then now she's like, I'm like, also I have Lego Marvel, Lego Avengers, Lego Batman 3, because I have kids. I'm like, we have all these Lego games. She's like, cool, we'll start playing those, going through. I'm like, thank God, give us a break from Diablo for a little bit.
I might try that, actually, because I've not tried, introducing my wife to the Lego games. But it might work.
Yeah. Yeah.
I just remember. Sorry, go on.
No, yeah, they're not. I was gonna say, they're not super difficult to the point where you're not going to get super pissed off. There's no like end game, because if you die, you just come back. There's still kind of that collecting aspect of it, because you're trying to unlock everything. You're trying to get all the characters. You're trying to 100% each level. So there's still stuff to do. But yeah, like my wife, who, like I said, her games are mostly Diablo, and that's really about it. She'll play Rock Band, but like Diablo's like her jam. But I was like, yeah, we could play these. And she actually was like, no, that was fun. And of course, the Lego games, I almost want to play the earlier ones first, because there was no talking. There was no voice dialogue or nothing. It was all just like motions and grunts and shit. But then as you get to the newer ones, they have like full dialogue and like story, like a lot more to it. So I'm like debating whether or not I go play the newer ones now, or do I go back and play Lego Star Wars so she doesn't like play a game that has all the dialogue and all that, and then go back to a game that doesn't. I was just like, we'll figure out which one to play next.
Yeah, I just remembered something, talking about cooperative games. Of course, the other game I played on the N64 was Goldeneye.
I was going to say, did you ever get into Goldeneye or Perfect Dark or any of those?
Well, we had, the weird thing is, because Goldeneye was Rare, wasn't it?
Yes.
And Rare, weirdly, I mean, bearing in mind at this point in time I lived in a village in the middle of nowhere in the middle of England, but we happened to have Rare headquarters 2 miles down the road.
That's right, you did.
Yeah, in a very small village called Twycross. And I managed to get a tour of Rare through a friend of mine's dad worked there. And that place was just phenomenal.
That's so fucking cool, man. Holy shit. Like, wow.
It was, I mean, they've changed it now.
Sure.
It's just a massive sprawling complex. But at the point in time, it used to be this huge old mansion. It looked like the Addams Family kind of. It was as big. But yeah, I remember going in there and just seeing, Donkey Kong Country and all those other stuff. And it was just so surreal because it was in this really, old building in the middle of nowhere, 2 miles down the road from me. It was so weird.
That's so awesome.
Yeah, it was. And so GoldenEye was fantastic because first FPS on a console that I remember anyway. I mean, you had things like Time Splitters later on, but it was. I mean, it was really basic. You go back now, maybe is it on Rare Replay? I can't remember.
It isn't. Like, that was one of the games that they didn't get on Rare Replay. I'm assuming only because of the James Bond license being with someone else. I don't know. But I think it's the only reason why it didn't get put on there. Perfect Dark did, though. Yeah.
Which obviously was the same kind of engine, wasn't it?
Basically, like, it was the same damn game. They just got rid of the James Bond license and like reskinned it with, new characters, new levels. Like, that's basically what they did. But also too, when you have a game that works and you can't do GoldenEye 2, quote unquote, you know what I mean? Like, you just basically go, well, we need another one of those because that made us a shit ton of money and it was really popular. Then I mean, I completely get why they did it. That was also. Perfect Dark was one of those games that required the expansion pack, so it was like showing off horsepower of that as well. So, I don't blame them at all though for doing it, because again, like, dude, get your money while you can, man. People don't make games for fun; they make games to try to make money. So, well, let me rephrase that: bigger companies make a lot of games trying to make money. So, when you see how much success GoldenEye had, why would you not want to try to replicate that?
I mean, Rare itself has had such a weird journey if you look back into the history. From all the GoldenEye stuff and whatever, Conker's Bad Fur Day, that was a weird one.
Yeah, it was kind of weird.
And then it got bought out, didn't it?
Then Microsoft bought it, starting with the original Xbox, and then that's when they started making. They made like Grabbed by the Ghoulies, which is like, huh. And then they made Viva Pinata. But then they turned into basically a Kinect studio for a while, and now, thank God, they're doing something that's not Kinect related. So, I mean, it doesn't matter. Kinect's gone.
Talking about one of the weirdest decisions ever, making Rare into a Kinect software studio. What was that about?
I don't know. You can ask Microsoft, because they were making some fucking weird decisions there for a little bit, but. I don't get it. Like, and the crazy thing is like, for example, I got Rare Replay because I remember when that was announced, I was like $20, even if I don't play it all the time, $20 just to see some history. But then you look back at some games that you didn't even know that they did, and you're like, dude, holy shit, Rare made this game? Like, on the NES way back in the day? Like, there was a game I played called Snake, Rattle, and Roll, which is basically, and you just play as a snake and you go around eating these little pellets, and then as you eat those pellets you can grow taller to get up on and I remember like looking at the Rare Replay list of games, I'm like, holy shit, Snake, Rattle, Roll, they did that? That's awesome. Like, that right there, that hit that nostalgia button right there, because I didn't have that affinity for Goldeneye or Perfect Dark because I didn't play them. So I didn't have that mentality. I was just like, oh, let's just see what's on here. For $20, I'm sure it's worth it because Battletoads was on there, which I never played, but I heard it's hard as shit. I was like, I'll try it one day. But then I saw Snake Rattle and Roll, and I was like, this is worth $20 to me right here, because this is one of those games that I just remember playing on the NES. So that worked.
I think the last Rare game I ever bought was the Kinect Star Wars thing. Did you ever play that?
That game was trash. That game sucked.
That was diabolical.
And how sad as a Star Wars fan, because it came with that awesome console, right? It had that R2-D2 console, the white Kinect, the C-3PO controller, and that hunk of shit game with it. And you try to think it's good, you try to justify your purchase. Just like people who saw Episode 1, they try to think it was awesome, and then they look back and they go, man, that movie sucked. No, Kinect Star Wars sucked. It was not good.
It was. I should have thought about it. Anything that has a kind of dancing section with Han Solo is not going to be good, is it? Really?
Yeah, probably not. I mean, it's just. I mean,
to believe.
But again, we didn't see that. Again, the problem is all of us Star Wars nerds saw Kinect Star Wars and had the hope of lightsaber battles. That's what we envisioned. We were like, holy shit, we're going to be able to use our hands and pretend to do shit with a lightsaber, and this is going to be amazing. And then you're fucking dancing as Han Solo, and we were like, we got duped. We got duped so fucking hard.
It's such an odd choice to use Rare, an amazing studio, and produce a game like that under the Star Wars license.
It just sucked. I was just like, man, whatever. I mean, but also, too, what's weird, too, is like, Rare got put in charge of making the avatars for Xbox. So, like, when Microsoft bought them, they just, I don't know if they knew what the fuck to do with them. They were just like, Viva Pinata was good, apparently. Again, never played it. Not shitting on it. Just never played it. But, like, a lot of people liked Viva Pinata. And then the Banjo-Kazooie game that came out on Xbox after 1 and 2 or whatever, the Nuts and Bolts, apparently that was good, too. So it's just weird that you go from making good games and then you get in charge of Kinect Sports Rivals, and like, why would you do that to them? Again, now at least, granted, Kinect's super dead now. Like, they fucking killed, they don't make it anymore, and they don't even make the adapter for the Xbox One S anymore. So it's like, it's officially a wrap. So now they're just full on back to making cool shit. And Sea of Thieves looks fun. It looks really fun. I worry that it's one of those games that you maybe should have to play with other people to fully enjoy it. I hope it's not the case. But no, that game looks fucking awesome, and I'm super pumped for that game. So hopefully Rare will come back and make some good shit, and Microsoft won't come up with some stupid-ass peripheral and make them make shit for it. Yeah,
Sea of Thieves, but if you look at all the footage that they've sent out and all the Let's Plays or whatever, it has to be a multiplayer. You have to experience that.
Yeah. I mean, again, like some games, like, for example, like, as time gets older and like certain games, I feel that I can play multiplayer, but I don't necessarily have to play with friends, right? Like, there's games like, for example, like Halo 5. I don't have to play that game with friends to enjoy it. I can just get into a game, play Warzone, have a blast, and stop. But then there's certain multiplayer games that if I'm not playing with my buddies, I don't feel as like I'm having as much fun. And that was the example why I didn't buy Ghost Recon, because Ghost Recon Wildlands, I remember seeing every Let's Play for it. I watched the Kind of Funny Let's Play that all four of them were playing, and I was like, that game looks amazing. And then I remembered it looks amazing because 4 best friends are sitting down playing it all at once. And I'm like, awesome. That's probably not going to happen for me because all of my friends have full-time jobs and families, and the likelihood of all of us doing this all the time is never going to fucking happen. So I didn't even buy it.
Yeah, I mean, you have the same problem I do. You know, all my friends got families, jobs that, you know, trying to get everybody in one place at one time is nigh on impossible. So it basically cuts out any of those games for me. So I mainly focus on single player games, you know, something that whenever I get a brief moment to actually play anything, I can actually just pick it up and play without having to worry about where everybody is.
Exactly. I'm in the same boat. Like, I literally today, before talking to you, just beat South Park Fractured Butthole. Like,
Good, isn't it?
It's so fucking good. It's so good. Like, it's so funny, and I'm happier that they went with a more strategic approach to the combat, because I'm not saying the turn-based, like, from Stick of Truth was bad. It was just real basic. Like, it wasn't really... Yeah, it was just a traditional turn-based RPG, but then when they did this with the more, like, moving around and having to figure out where you place your characters, and, oh, this object's in the way so you can't hit the person behind it. Like, they did all that shit, which I was like, great, you guys made the combat better. And, of course, the game is hilarious. Like... Both of these South Park games are ridiculously funny. I'm just sitting there laughing my ass off. And, no, I just, I'm more focused on the single-player stuff only because I know for a fact, no matter what time it is, I can turn on South Park, play it, and then play it for an hour and then go to bed. But certain games happen, and then the world stops. Like PUBG, when that came out for Xbox,
Yeah.
Every fucking person on my friends list was playing PUBG. Like, no one else was playing shit. It was like just a whole friends list of PUBG. And I was like, see, that's good. But also, too, that lasted a week. You know what I mean? Like, and I'm not saying it's not going to continue to be good or whatever. I'm just saying the list of my friends playing that hardcore of one game lasted a whole week and then it stopped. Unless it's a Grand Theft Auto expansion that comes out for online, then I see a bunch of people playing that. But yeah, that's kind of just one of those things about getting older, is that your free time is kind of gone, and just focusing more on the shit that you can play rather than, because if I waited to just play multiplayer games with my buddies, I wouldn't play fucking games. Like, I would not be playing games if I only waited for them to start playing with me.
Yeah, no, exactly. It's impossible. The only time I get to play games is basically when Laurie, my wife, and my son are in bed, unconscious, asleep. So that's the only time I'm allowed in inverted commas to play games. But I'm quite happy with that because it means I don't have any distractions.
Yeah, exactly. Like, that's another thing too. Like, the good thing is, well, I don't know if it's a good thing. My kids are gamers as well, so for the most part, they can keep themselves occupied until it's a point where I'm like, "Hey, kids, we need to get out of the house," and everyone's like, "I don't want to." I'm like, no, we need to go out and go do something, because we're all just sitting here playing games or on our phones or whatever. So I mean, it's cool that we could do things together as a family. Like, me, my wife, and my two older kids will play Mario Kart 4 players. So I mean, that's fun. But also too, I'm like, all right, kids, we're gonna go to the park, and they're just like, But Dad, Titanfall's way funner than the park. I'm like, yeah, I get that, but we're going to the park. Like, we gotta get the hell out of the house. We gotta do something. We can't just be stuck in here all day.
Yeah, basically you need to balance it off to alleviate your guilt.
Yeah, exactly. Like, all right, we gotta get the hell out of the house. We gotta do something. So basically, what are your gaming? Well, we kind of missed. So after PS2, where did you head to?
Yeah, sorry. I know I'm waffling on a bit.
Oh no, we're all waffling. It's fine. That's this whole show now.
So had PS2, I also had an Xbox at the same time when that came out. So I got that mainly for KOTOR, and then later Jade Empire, because they were just amazing games.
Back when Xbox had really, really, really good RPGs, and now they don't have as many.
Fable as well. Fable was on Xbox.
It sure was.
Yeah, a phenomenal game, that really was. And of course, your normal fare like Halo and everything like that. That was incredible. So I had Xbox, PS2 alongside each other. I was working at this point, so I could actually afford to buy these things.
That's always the fun time, when you're working, but you don't have all the family stuff yet, so you have that disposable income and you're single and you can do whatever the hell you want. Those are the better gaming years, I would say.
Oh, but I spent far too much time playing games then, though. It was ridiculous.
Oh, right. Yeah, that's where it gets really a little hectic and everything. You're like, your buddies asked to go out, and you're like, no, I'm going to go play this game instead. So, yeah, I get that.
You know, it's bad when your mates are asking you down to the pub, and you're like, actually, I've just got to finish this.
Yeah, I'll just do this instead, right?
Yeah. So, also had a GameCube around then as well. It was roughly the same kind of period, I think. A bit later on, wasn't it, the GameCube?
It was around the same time frame and everything. Like, those were the big three at the time.
Yeah. So I had Resi 4 on the GameCube, and that was phenomenal.
Dude, wasn't that just out of left field way too fucking good at the time? Like, that game was ridiculously good, and it had, like, again, like, Resident Evil, I'm not saying 2 and 3 weren't good, but, like, they were just kind of the same thing, you know? Like, 2 and 3 were just, like, they were literally the same town and everything. Like, the same Raccoon City Police Department, like, all that. And then, like, Code Veronica came out and all that, but then when, like, 4 came out, how it was just so different, but so fucking good. Like, it's still really good.
Yeah, I mean, I got it again on the PS4, and it's still really amazing.
Yeah, like, it's just, that changed so much. But also, too, in a way, it sucked because that was, like, the highlight of it when it got really fucking good was Resident Evil 4. And then 5 wasn't that bad, but it was awesome co-op. If you ever played the full game co-op, it was fucking fun. And then 6 was just just not good. It just wasn't good.
It just got so confused.
Yeah.
But Resi 4 on the GameCube was so weird because it's a really gritty Resident Evil game on the GameCube, and it was exclusive to the GameCube
for quite a while. Yeah.
It was such a weird platform of choice. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, well, because I remember that was back when Capcom was basically like, hey, we give a shit about Nintendo, we're going to give you some exclusives. And then that was when games like Beautiful Joe and all of that came out and everything for GameCube. And then they had a couple more exclusives. I remember they were exclusive for a brief, I wouldn't say a brief period, but like eventually all of them came to PS2. But yeah, I mean, like, they gave a shit about Nintendo, and they actually gave it Resident Evil, which is amazing.
I'll tell you another hardware mistake that I bought around that time, or maybe it was later, actually. It must have been a bit later. Did you ever hear of the Nokia N-Gage?
Yeah. Yeah, the N-Gage, I completely remember that.
That was a mistake.
Just a bit.
I mean, that was... First of all, because it was a phone as well. Have you ever seen anybody use it as a phone?
No, never.
You look like a moron. You basically have to flip the phone on its side and plant it to your ear. So the opposite of how you would think it would be. So not the flat side against your head, the side of it.
That's ridiculous.
So you just look like you've had a lobotomy recently and you don't phone.
Like, sir, do you know how phones work? I do, and this is how Nokia decided for me to fucking use this thing. It
was just bizarre, and the games were just awful. I think there was one. I can't remember the name of it. There was one fairly good Advance Wars-ish type game on there. That was about it, but it was a dreadful phone as well.
It was just, again, hardware with promise, like, hey, it's a phone and a game system, and then everybody was just, like, developing for it, like, what the fuck? I remember it always got, like, weird ports, too. I remember that. Like, odd, just random ports, but of course it wasn't, like, the actual game port. It was just, like, here's Resident Evil for N-Gage, or whatever it was, you know what I mean? It was, like, the N-Gage version, which was basically, like, a Game Boy version, but a little bit better. Like, it was just weird.
It was like a Game Boy Color version of titles that are good.
Yeah, exactly.
These versions were just a pile of shit.
Yeah, they were really bad.
They were. That was a bad purchase.
Well, just like they had Oblivion was on flip phones as a game, and you're like,
was it?
Yeah. Go look that up. Like, you'll be like, what in the fuck is this? Again, Oblivion had that good name, so they were just like, you know, those awful flip phones, and they had those games on those types of phones. And, because that was back when, you know, Japan had phones that were actually running awesome games, and America and everywhere else in the world, we were just like, where are those cool games? No, you get Oblivion that looks like shit and plays like shit. And it's not even like, again, it was just a Game Boy Color version of the game. It was fucking terrible.
Oh my god, I'm gonna have to look at that because that just sounds.
It's trash. Go look at it though; it's quite funny. Because I think it was an ad either in the game box or like in a game magazine that like talked about it. And I was like, "Good lord, what were you doing?"
So anyway, then we go on, and then we obviously get to the 360 PS3 era, and I had I had the 360 first of all, and that was my main console at that point. Actually, I got the original PS3. I got that much later on because of
when it wasn't an arm and a leg. Yeah,
that was an interesting price point.
That was we're Sony, go fuck yourself price point. Like, we're Sony, we had 2 amazing consoles in a row, we can do what the fuck we want. And everybody was like, you sure can't. We're not buying that. Like, no one. Like, so many people did not buy that thing when they initially had that price launch. Everybody's like, you are out of your damn mind if you think we're going to pay that.
It's like Sony does this every now and then, makes inexplicable choices. And the price point's one of them. A more later example of that is not having the Ultra HD Blu-ray player in your PS4 Pro.
When they owned the patent for Blu-ray, yeah, that makes real sense, right?
It's just mind-boggling. I don't understand it. It's a really odd... I mean, I just got a Pro, and it galls me that I can't just pick... It's just moronic. I don't get it.
Right. No, and that was the one thing that... It's funny because every Xbox One S and X that gets sold, they have to pay Sony a license for the 4K Blu-ray technology, but Sony can't just put one in their own fucking console that they manufacture and make and own.
Yeah, I mean, loads of people have had this discussion on how ridiculous it is. I won't go on about it, but it is odd, just really odd choices.
But also on the price front, like, I think when you get cocky... Like, I think it's more the business side, because, of course, it's all business, right? But, like, same thing with Xbox One, though. When they came out, they were like, guess what? Everybody wants to Kinect, right? Everybody wants to, and then guess what? It's going to be $500. Everybody's going to be cool with that, right? And they fucking quickly learned, like, no one gives a shit about Kinect. No one gives a shit, and your $500 compared to $400, like, it's the exact opposite of what happened the generation before it. Like, everybody wanted the cheaper console that, was just... Because, again, Sony at the time, when PS3 came out, it had Blu-ray, which at the time was brand fucking new, and it was really expensive. A lot of people were buying PS3s over Blu-ray players, because Blu-ray players at the time were $1,000, and a PS3 was $600. And, again, though, like, that's the whole thing. When you get cocky and you think you can do shit because you had such success before, not with gamers, dude. That shit backfires harder than anything. Yeah.
I mean, the Kinect thing, they must have pumped so much money into that technology that they had to recoup the money somehow.
They had
That's why they included it in the one. It must be something like that, because there's no other reason I can think of, because it was poorly received. The original one, it didn't work. It
sold a ton. Here's what's crazy. If you actually go back and look at sales figures, it wasn't that great. You had to have the perfect situation for it to work right. There's not enough light in the room, the big enough space for it, but it sold a ton. And I think, like you said, Microsoft just saw how many sales it had and put a lot of money into the next version, thinking people would still give a shit. But then when you forced it on people and made the price more, gamers don't give a shit, and they'll be like, "No, we're good. We see past that shit, and we're not going to do that."
Yeah, I mean, it's just an odd choice. I understand the business reason, but the amount of goodwill they lost by forcing it on people was just, definitely not worth it.
Nope. So then, obviously, you continued on, and now you have... Do you have everything again? Do you have Xbox One, Switch, PS4? Do you have everything now?
I can't justify having everything now.
Well, also, too, it depends. Like you said, you have a lot less time to play games now. So, I mean... Also, too, if you have other things, other hobbies that you're interested in, I mean, of course, just depends on what you do and what your hobbies are. Like, my main hobby is gaming, so I am fortunate enough, and, also, too, I work and I have the disposable income. Like, I do have all of them. Do I get to play all of them all the time? No. Like, if I really had to choose, I could just have my Xbox and be cool with it. But, again, it's just... My Xbox One X is my main machine, but then I have a PlayStation for the Sony exclusives. I have a Switch for the Switch exclusives, which, again, the Switch exclusive one is the harder one, because I'm like, I kind of already played some of these. But, no, I mean, again, like a PS4, if you have a Pro especially, a PS4 Pro, that'll give you a majority of the games. I'm not saying Xbox, oh, you have to go buy an Xbox One to get those Xbox exclusives. But also, too, if you ever get a chance to pick up like an Xbox One S dirt cheap, that's always a good thing.
Yeah, I mean, I'm always on the lookout. If it's a reasonable price, I may well pick it up. But I've made a few. So I've got the Pro, and I've got a PSVR as well.
Oh shit!
Yeah, exactly. So, and they're great. PSVR is fantastic, especially now that I've got the Pro. Except for the HDR link through problem, which is a pain in the ass.
Yeah, again, Sony, get your shit together. Like, if you're gonna do these things, kind of figure it out. Like those are just weird things. Like, you're making all of it. Like, you make the system, you make the software, you make the hardware. How does that shit happen with your own stuff? Like, I get if it's like a third party accessory and it doesn't work, but how do you fuck up your own shit? Like, how do you do that?
There's other weird things as well. It's like sort of utilizing the old Move technology for the PSVR. It's like you've invested all this money in a virtual reality system, which must have cost so much, and yet you only make available ancient controllers to work with it. It's
Again, though, I think like the same thing you said earlier, though, they probably put a lot of money into that Move technology and all the controllers. How much you would have bet there was a warehouse of like 1 million of them, and they're like, fuck, we got to figure out a way to use these. Like, oh, VR, there we go, that works.
It will be that, yeah. They're trying to save money on, creating something new, but it was, it's really dragged the system down. I mean, it's selling all right.
Right.
And there's some good stuff coming out for it now. So not just experience type stuff. There's, decent proper titles like The Impatient and things coming out now.
Right. I mean, and that's always going to be the case with new shit. Like, you always have those experiences, especially with VR. Because, I mean, like, the only thing that sucks about VR is, like, you should only play it in certain chunks. Like, you shouldn't play it for 8 hours, Like, you shouldn't. So that's the only problem with it is, like, the experiences work well because they're short enough to allow you time to play it without getting sick or without having eye strain or whatever. But yeah, I mean, like RE7, you could play the whole damn game in VR if you want to, which is terrifying, and I would never fucking do. No, like, I couldn't do that.
I tell you what, Resi 7 got it right because obviously you can do both. You can do like, half an hour on the VR headset and then switch it just to normal control. But I'm pretty hardened to horror games and all things horror. But I tell you what, playing Resident Evil 7 scared the shit out of me.
Yeah, no, like, not a fucking chance, dude.
When that guy comes through the side of the building, the side of the wall, I purposely hadn't looked at any preview stuff. Right. So I didn't know it was coming. And I've literally squealed like a, prepubescent teenager. It was horrifying. But the more horrifying thing about the PlayStation VR when I first got it is there was a demo, like a tech demo called Kitchen, which was actually a preview for Resident Evil 7. Right. Or they didn't know it at the time. And you're basically in a chair whilst this freakish monster comes around and scares the shit out of you. And I put that on my wife, and I'd only had this for 2 hours. Uh-huh. As soon as that happened, she picked it up off her head and chucked it across the room.
Yeah, I mean, I do, again, you have to deal with two things. One, you just pissed your wife off because you scared her to death. And two, she just chucked your $500 headset. So it's like, okay, I guess I gotta accept that because I have the last game that really just scared the shit out of me was Evil Within. Like, because again, it's just the jump scare shit. Like, you're just playing, bah, out of nowhere some shit happens, and you have that jump scare moment. And I got Evil Within 2, which I was going to start after I played South Park, and I'm sitting there thinking, like, dude, I don't want to have those fucking jump scares again. Like, it's just stupid. I don't get scared easily, but just, especially when you're wearing headphones, you're fucking, that's what fucks you up. Like, if you're just listening through TV speakers, it's not a big deal. When it's headphones, it's just next level, fucking irritates you.
I'll tell you something. I had exactly the same thought. So I played Evil Within, when it first came out. I really enjoyed it.
I did too.
Really, art direction, storyline, I really liked it. Mm-hmm. And I was looking forward to the sequel. Mm-hmm. But then it was released, and I'm not in the right place for it mentally. I'm really not. I'm like, okay, I'd rather play something that I can relax in front of.
Yeah, exactly.
Lose myself, but not on the edge of my seat, uncomfortable, waiting for the next jump scare. So,
I got it because it was on sale for Black Friday here in the States. I got it, and I'm like, I want to play it, but I also have to get into that mind frame. Like, I got to be prepared for shit to happen. I played South Park just laughing my ass off the whole time. So it's like, am I going to go from South Park laughing my ass off, having a funny time, to waiting just to fucking freak out and just, all right, well, I just got to get in the right mood and do that. I don't want to be one of those guys that holds on to it till Halloween either. I'm like, I'll just fucking man up and do it and just get it done and get it over with. So, do you do any streaming, or do you have your own Twitch, or do you play any games online? Or, I mean, like you were saying earlier, you don't play as many games online, but if people wanted to check you out online, where would they go?
Okay, so my other hobby is I'm a writer. I write fiction. And I also have a blog I write, which is basically a blog about my son. It's all the funny shit that happens, rearing a son. So online, shall I go through that? Shall I tell people?
Yeah, go ahead. Absolutely.
Okay, cool. So it's called, my son's called Noah. The blog's called the Noah Chronicles. So if you looked at me on Facebook, it's at Noah Chronicles. But the actual website, the actual blog is noahchronicles.wordpress.com. That's the main, if you want to check out my writing. Not game related, but that's what I do. And then I have, if you just put in Ben Harris Fiction on Facebook, you'll find all my other fiction stuff, which is mainly short stories, mainly in the sci-fi fantasy kind of genre. But my gamer tag on PlayStation is Dr. Portent. So that's DRPORTENT. That's about it.
And I will have links in the show notes and everything. If you guys want to check out any of his stuff, I'll have links for all of it as well. Dude, thank you so much for being on the show. Thank you for sharing your stories. And I really appreciate you being on here, man.
No, Mitch, thank you so much. I'm honored that you invited me on. And you're doing a fantastic job.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it.
Okay. Take care, mate.
All right. And again, thank you, Ben, for being on the show. If you guys want to check out any of his stuff, any of his blogs, his Facebook, I will have links in the show notes as well for all of that. Again, I do apologize if the audio was all over the place. For whatever reason, computer was just having all sorts of fun today. So again, if, anything was off, I do apologize. I'm not going to say I'm a perfectionist, but I do want to try to produce good stuff for you guys. So won't happen again. I'll make sure of it. Again, if you guys want to be on the show just like he was, go ahead and send me a tweet at MitchPower1116 on Twitter, or at the podcast Twitter page, which is at GUG Podcast on Twitter. If you guys want to join the Facebook group, there is a Facebook group, Growing Up Gaming Facebook group. You can just search that, and I'm sure you'll find it right away. I'd love to have as many members as I can on there, and that way we can all share our stories there as well. Again, thank you guys so much for listening each and every week to the show. Really appreciate it. Don't forget to share it with a friend. Subscribe on iTunes or Google Play. Comment, review us, all that fun stuff. The same thing every other podcaster says. And I will catch you guys next week. See ya.